In the quiet suburbs of Chicago lived Maya, a 17-year-old girl with an extraordinary mind. A child prodigy, she devoured law books, debated college students by 12, yet she kept a low profile, uninterested in the spotlight. Her grandmother, a retired teacher, instilled in her the importance of humility. One day, while helping her grandmother with groceries, Maya overheard a distraught single mother. Her landlord was evicting her, her two young children, for a perceived lease violation. Maya's heart sank. This injustice resonated deeply. She saw documents filled with discrepancies. A formal letter was penned demanding the landlord cease the eviction. He ignored her. Maya helped Teresa file a small claims case. The case caught fire. Local reporters descended, their headlines focusing on this remarkable teenager. But not everyone was impressed. Some questioned her qualifications, others mocked her audacity. The courtroom date loomed. Teresa was terrified. What if they lost? Maya reassured her, but the stakes were high. This wasn't just about Teresa. It was about standing up to injustice. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom filled with whispers and stifled laughter. Judge Patterson, known for his sharp tongue, mocked Maya's decision to represent herself. A child playing dress-up, he sneered. But then Maya spoke. Her voice, steady and clear, dismantled the prosecution's case. Her knowledge of legal precedents, her razor-sharp arguments, stunned the judge and the seasoned lawyers. The courtroom was hushed. A heavy silence, thick with unspoken judgment, settled over the room. All eyes were on Maya, a young black woman, standing before the judge. Her composure was remarkable, a stark contrast to the torrent of scorn she'd just endured. Judge Patterson, a man known for his biting wit and condescending manner, had spent the last 20 minutes berating her. He'd mocked her for daring to represent herself, for the audacity of a teenager stepping into such a serious case. His laughter, cruel and echoing, still hung in the air. A child playing dress-up, he'd sneered. This is a courtroom, young lady, not a school play. But then Maya spoke. Her voice was steady, clear, unwavering. It wasn't a voice of defiance, but a voice of quiet strength. She began to dismantle the prosecution's case, piece by painstaking piece. Her understanding of the law, her sharp, precise arguments, left the seasoned lawyers in the room speechless, their confidence visibly shaken. The judge's smug expression, so prevalent moments before, vanished, replaced by a growing unease, a subtle flicker of doubt in his eyes. A gasp rippled through the audience. This wasn't just some naive girl. This was something more. Objection! One of the prosecutors interrupted, his voice tight with frustration. Your Honor, I have reason to believe this individual is not who she claims to be. Maya turned, her gaze meeting the prosecutor's. A faint smile touched her lips. Your Honor, she said, her voice calm yet firm, I can provide my credentials if necessary, but I assure you, every word I've spoken is legally sound. Shall we continue? The crimson flush on Judge Patterson's face deepened. His voice, usually so assured, cracked with disbelief. Who are you? He demanded. Maya reached into her satchel, withdrew a single document, and presented it to the bailiff. As the paper made its way to the judge, a palpable tension gripped the room. The judge's hands trembled as he read. His lips moved, but no words came out. The weight of the document, the weight of the unspoken truth, seemed to press down on him and on the entire courtroom. The audience held their breath, waiting for the silence to break, for the truth to finally emerge. The weight of expectation hung heavy in the air. It was a moment of profound anticipation. The silence held the promise of something significant, something life-altering, about to unfold. The silence hung heavy, thick as the dust motes dancing in the courtroom's weak sunlight. Every eye, it seemed, was fixed on Maya. A young black girl, barely a woman, standing alone against the weight of the accusations leveled against her. Just moments before, the air had crackled with Judge Patterson's scorn. His voice, sharp as a razor, had cut through the room, dissecting her confidence, mocking her very presence. He'd sneered, his words dripping with contempt. You think you can fool this court? A child playing dress-up as an attorney? This is a courtroom, young lady, not a school play. His laughter, a cruel echo in the hushed chamber, still resonated. He dismissed her, belittled her, reduced her to nothing more than a naive child in a grown-up's game. But the quiet dignity she maintained, the unwavering calm in her eyes, was a silent protest against his arrogance. It was a testament to a strength he couldn't comprehend. Then she spoke, not in a shout to silence his taunts, but in a quiet, steady voice that carried a weight far beyond her years. Slowly, deliberately, she began to unravel the prosecution's case. Not with fiery rhetoric or theatrical pronouncements, but with precise, measured words, each carefully chosen, each carrying the weight of legal precedents. She spoke of case law, of established precedent, of the subtle inconsistencies and deliberate omissions in the prosecution's evidence. The words flowed from her, clear and confident, a calm river cutting through the stagnant pool of the judge's prejudices. Experienced attorneys, hardened by years of courtroom battles, sat mesmerized. Their initial amusement had vanished, replaced by a quiet respect for the brilliance they were witnessing. The judge, his face growing ever more strained, watched as she systematically dismantled the arguments he'd so confidently supported. A murmur rose from the gallery. Whispers turned to gasps as the full force of Maya's intellect became apparent. This was no ordinary defendant. This was a legal mind, sharp and unwavering. This was a young woman who understood the law not merely as a set of rules, but as a shield against injustice. The prosecutor, his earlier smirk replaced by a mask of growing frustration, interrupted, his voice a sharp crack in the suddenly tense silence. "Objection, Your Honor. I have reason to believe this individual is not who she claims to be." Maya's gaze met his, unwavering. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips. "Your Honor," she responded, her voice soft but resolute, "I can provide my credentials, should that be necessary. But I assure you, every word I've spoken is legally sound. Shall we continue?" The judge's face, now a deep crimson, betrayed his discomfort. He knew, even before she produced the evidence, that this young woman was far more than he'd initially perceived. The challenge to her identity was not a question of doubt, but a desperate attempt to regain control, to diminish the power of her words. He wouldn't succeed. The seeds of his own defeat had already been sown. The silence after Maya's words hung heavy, a tangible thing pressing down on the courtroom. Judge Patterson, his face a mask of barely controlled fury, stared at the document being passed up to him. His hand, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he unfolded the crisp paper, his eyes scanning the words with growing disbelief. The smugness that had characterized his demeanor moments before had completely vanished, replaced by a dawning comprehension that unsettled him deeply. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, the words catching in his throat. A visible tremor ran through him, a stark contrast to the bluster he'd displayed only minutes earlier. This was more than just a smart-mouthed teenager. This was something unexpected, something that challenged everything he thought he knew. The air in the room crackled with unspoken questions, with the tension of a dam about to break. The audience, initially captivated by Maya's unexpected legal prowess, now leaned forward, their collective breath held as they waited for the judge's reaction, for the fallout from this seemingly small piece of paper. Time seemed to slow, stretching each moment into an eternity, as the judge finally lowered the document, his face pale and drawn. The weight of the revelation settled on him, visibly shaking his composure. Then the scene shifted. We are taken back to the quiet suburbs of Chicago, many miles and a world away from the tense courtroom. We see a different Maya, a 17-year-old girl living with her grandmother, Clara. A different Maya, but the same quiet intensity is present. A child prodigy, they said. She'd been reading law books for fun since she was 7, debating college students by 12. Yet, she had chosen to stay out of the spotlight, preferring the quiet hum of research and study to the clamor of public recognition. Clara, her grandmother, a retired schoolteacher, had instilled in her a deep sense of humility, a quiet understanding that her gifts were to be used for good. A quiet understanding that echoed in Maya's demeanor in the courtroom, not arrogance, but a quiet confidence. The contrast between this young girl, quietly learning the law, and this young woman standing tall in the face of systemic injustice made the audience understand the weight of what was happening. It is the calm before the storm. This wasn't just a court case, it was the story of a life dedicated to a purpose, a life that was about to change irrevocably. The quiet strength Maya projected was not merely competence, but the quiet dignity of a life shaped by humility and a thirst for justice. The air in the corner store hung heavy with the scent of stale coffee and unspoken anxieties. Maya, helping her grandmother with groceries, wasn't paying much attention to the conversations around her until a woman's voice, choked with despair, cut through the mundane hum of the afternoon. It was Teresa, a woman Maya knew vaguely from the neighborhood. A single mother, always struggling but always managing a kind smile. Now her smile was gone, replaced by a raw, heartbreaking grief. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke to the cashier, her voice barely a whisper. "He's evicting me," she said, her words barely audible above the gentle clinking of shopping bags. "My landlord, he says I violated the lease, but I haven't. I've paid every cent on time. I swear I haven't." Maya watched, her heart tightening in her chest. Teresa's shoulders slumped, her body trembling with a silent sob that spoke volumes of exhaustion and despair. The cashier, a young woman with weary eyes, offered a mumbled apology, her words hollow and unhelpful against the weight of Teresa's distress. The image of Teresa, broken and defeated, stayed with Maya long after she left the store. The cashier's helplessness and Teresa's despair echoed in the back of her mind. The image of her two young children, left vulnerable and without a home, haunted Maya. Later, finding Teresa in a quiet corner of a nearby park bench, Maya cautiously approached. Teresa's eyes, red and swollen, met hers with a mixture of surprise and quiet resignation. "I overheard," Maya began softly, her voice gentle. "What happened?" Teresa's words tumbled out, a torrent of frustration and desperation. She spoke of the landlord's accusations, too many people living in the apartment, a violation of the lease, accusations she vehemently denied, accusations that seemed deliberately designed to exploit her vulnerability. Her voice cracked with each word, each syllable, charged with the weight of her fear for her children's future. "It's just me and my babies," Teresa insisted, her voice thick with emotion. "He's lying. He wants to raise the rent to find someone who can pay more." Maya listened patiently, her heart aching for this woman, for the quiet injustice she was facing. She saw the fear in Teresa's eyes, the fear not just of losing her home, but of losing everything. And in that moment, a surge of determination filled Maya, a quiet resolve born from empathy and a deep-seated belief in the power of justice. "Let me help you," Maya said firmly. "I think you have a case." Teresa looked at her, disbelief etched on her face. "But you're just a kid," she whispered, the words laced with a painful mix of hope and doubt. Maya smiled, a small, reassuring smile that held the weight of a quiet strength. "I've been told that before," she replied gently. "Trust me." The scene shifted from the park bench to Maya's calm, determined expression, working diligently with Teresa's files in her room, the seed of a powerful intervention planted, and a silent promise of justice made. The quiet strength in Maya's eyes, the quiet determination etched on her face, spoke volumes. It was a look Teresa had seen before, in the faces of those who'd weathered hardship, who'd borne witness to injustice, a look that resonated deep within her own soul. "I don't know what to say," Teresa stammered, her voice choked with emotion. "You're just a kid." Maya smiled gently, a knowing look in her eyes that transcended her years. "I've been told that before," she said softly. "But I know the law, and I know what's right, and what Mr. Reynolds is doing, it isn't right." There was a quiet intensity in Maya's words, a quiet power that cut through Teresa's despair. It was the quiet power that comes from empathy, from a deep understanding of another's pain. It was the quiet power that comes from knowing your worth and fighting for it. "I have copies of my rent payments," Teresa murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "And the lease agreement. I kept everything." She fumbled in her purse, her hands shaking slightly as she produced a worn folder containing carefully preserved documents. Maya took the folder, her fingers gently tracing the worn edges. "Let me look at these," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Let me help you." It wasn't just a legal case to Maya. It was a chance to right a wrong, to give voice to the voiceless. The injustice Teresa faced stirred something deep within her, a sense of righteous anger, a fierce protectiveness, a quiet determination to fight for what was right. It wasn't merely about winning a case. It was about restoring faith in a system that had failed Teresa, a system that seemed to silence the pleas of the vulnerable. Over the next few days, Maya pored over Teresa's documents. She saw the inconsistencies, the carefully constructed lies woven into the landlord's accusations. She saw not just legal errors, but a deliberate attempt to manipulate and exploit Teresa's vulnerability. The unfairness, the blatant disregard for human decency, fueled Maya's resolve. This wasn't simply about winning a legal battle. It was about restoring dignity, about fighting back against a system that allowed such injustice to flourish. She drafted a formal letter to the landlord, demanding a cessation of the eviction and threatening legal action. When that was ignored, she helped Teresa file a case in small claims court. She did it not merely as a legal exercise, but as an act of quiet defiance, as a testament to her belief in the power of justice, a quiet power that comes from compassion and a belief in the inherent value of humanity. It was a power that would change her life, a power that would resonate far beyond this single case. This wasn't just about helping Teresa. It was about standing up for the countless others facing similar struggles. And it was just the beginning. News of Maya's actions spread through their small community like wildfire. Some whispered in admiration, their voices hushed with awe at the audacity of a teenager taking on such a powerful opponent. Others scoffed, their skepticism tinged with a familiar cynicism. "A kid. What does she know?" they muttered, their doubt fueled by years of ingrained mistrust in the system, and by a deep-seated skepticism of young people in authority. The whispers and the murmurs, the doubt and the admiration, it all swirled around Maya, a testament to the polarizing effect of challenging the status quo. Teresa, watching it all unfold, felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. The initial relief of having Maya on her side slowly morphed into a gnawing uncertainty. "What if we lose?" she confided in Maya one evening, her voice barely above a sigh. What if he wins? I don't have the money for a lawyer. I don't have anything left to lose." Maya looked at her, her expression filled with empathy and a quiet strength that reassured Teresa in the face of fear. "We won't lose, Teresa," Maya said firmly, her voice low and steady. "We have the truth on our side, and the truth eventually always wins." But even as she spoke the words, a shadow of doubt flickered across her own mind. The stakes were high, higher than just Teresa's apartment. This was about something bigger, something that went to the very heart of justice, and the relentless fight to make it prevail. The days leading up to the hearing were a blur of preparations. Maya worked tirelessly, poring over documents, honing her arguments, preparing for every conceivable challenge. But it wasn't just the legal preparations that weighed on her. It was the weight of expectation from the community, the weight of Teresa's hopes, and the knowledge that this wasn't simply about one case. This was about sending a message that challenged deep-seated prejudice and systemic inequality. Teresa, meanwhile, felt the pressure mounting. The anxiety gnawed at her, transforming sleep into a restless sea of worries. She replayed every interaction with her landlord, each conversation replayed with renewed fear and anxiety, each word, each interaction analyzed for hidden meanings, seeking any clues that could influence the outcome of this small claims court case. It was the fear of failure, of losing everything she had fought so hard to create. It was the weight of providing for her children, a fear that every parent felt. Maya reassured her again and again, her own quiet confidence a beacon in Teresa's deepening anxiety. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on Maya's shoulders, a weight she carried with the quiet determination of someone who knew the gravity of her cause. It was a shared weight between her and Teresa, a weight that would be tested in the days ahead, a weight that would make their shared victory even more profound. The time to take action was upon them. The weight of expectation, of hope, of a community's faith rested on their shoulders. The courtroom was packed, a sea of faces, a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and quiet anticipation, watched as Maya stepped forward. She was dressed simply, a navy blazer and skirt that did little to mask her youth. Yet there was a quiet confidence about her, a stillness that belied the storm brewing within. Before she could even begin, Judge Patterson interrupted, his voice laced with the familiar condescension. "And who are you supposed to be?" he asked, his tone dripping with disdain. The question, more than a simple inquiry, was a clear dismissal, an attempt to belittle her, to reduce her to insignificance, a deliberate attempt to stifle her before she could even begin to speak. "I'm representing the plaintiff, Your Honor," Maya replied calmly, her voice unwavering. Her composure was remarkable, a stark contrast to the disdain radiating from the judge, a testament to an inner strength that couldn't be shaken, a strength born of quiet determination and belief in the justice she sought to deliver. Judge Patterson chuckled, a harsh, dismissive sound that echoed through the silent courtroom. "You must be joking," he said, shaking his head. "Is this some kind of prank?" A ripple of whispers ran through the audience. Some chuckled, their laughter a cruel undercurrent to the tension in the air. Others exchanged worried glances, understanding the insidiousness of the judge's dismissal. Others sensed the quiet strength in Maya's demeanor, recognizing a quiet power that refused to be intimidated, a power that resonated with them, born from years of overcoming similar dismissals. But Maya stood firm, her expression unchanged. Judge Patterson, fueled by his own arrogance, continued his barrage of condescending remarks. He questioned her qualifications, her credibility, her very ability to comprehend the complexities of the legal system. He spoke of kids these days, of their supposed lack of understanding and their inherent immaturity. His words, designed to belittle and intimidate, hung in the air, a testament to his own insecurities and lack of respect for someone who was about to prove him completely wrong. Maya remained silent, her eyes fixed on the judge. She endured the barrage, not with anger or defensiveness, but with a quiet dignity that spoke volumes. It was a testament to her inner strength, her resolve, and her absolute belief in the justice of her cause. The quiet dignity was a powerful response, a silent protest against the judge's prejudice and an unspoken affirmation of her abilities. She was quietly absorbing the insults, strategically waiting for her moment. Her silence was not weakness, but a powerful strategy against an opponent who had underestimated her. A silence that was about to be shattered. The courtroom held its breath. Maya, poised and calm, had just finished dismantling the prosecution's case with a precision that left even seasoned lawyers stunned. The judge, his earlier arrogance replaced by a growing unease, watched her with a mixture of disbelief and dawning respect. He hadn't anticipated this level of skill, this quiet confidence from a girl barely old enough to vote. Then she reached into her satchel, her hand emerging with a single, pristine document. She passed it to the bailiff with a quiet dignity that only amplified the sense of anticipation that hung in the air. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with the quiet expectancy of a truth about to be revealed. As the document made its slow journey to the judge's bench, a palpable tension filled the room. The whispers ceased, the rustling of papers died down. Every eye followed the document's path, drawn to its seemingly simple surface, the paper carrying a weight far greater than its physical form. It felt like a turning point, a shift in the tide, a testament to the quiet power of truth about to be revealed. Judge Patterson, his face now devoid of its usual arrogance, unfolded the document slowly. His hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as his eyes scanned the contents. His expression was unreadable, a mask of uncertainty that mirrored the feelings of everyone present. The moment stretched, the silence thick and heavy, a silence pregnant with the weight of revelation. It was a silence filled with anticipation. Then he looked up. His eyes, devoid of their earlier condescension, met Maya's. There was a flicker of something akin to respect, a subtle recognition of the truth that lay before him. The document's message had landed in a powerful moment. The room waited with bated breath. Time stopped for a moment. Suddenly Maya spoke, her voice clear and calm, yet carrying the unshakable weight of her credentials. "My name is Maya Brooks," she said, her voice resonating with an authority that silenced the room. "And I passed the bar exam at 16. The revelation hung in the air, a sudden explosion of unexpected truth that shattered the carefully constructed facade of the courtroom. A stunned silence fell upon the room, each person holding their breath. The sheer audacity of it, the quiet confidence, the inherent justice, it was a moment of pure, quiet power. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, growing into a wave of stunned disbelief. The air crackled with the sudden shift in power dynamics. The courtroom transformed from a place of judgment into a battlefield of stunned reaction. The shock was not simply from her age and achievement, but the quiet confidence with which she revealed it. The moment resonated far beyond the courtroom. Judge Patterson's gavel slammed against the bench, a desperate attempt to restore order amidst the chaos. But the damage was done. The truth had been spoken, and the courtroom would never be the same. This wasn't just about winning a case, it was about challenging assumptions, about shattering expectations. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Maya's lips. This was only the beginning. The judge's abrupt adjournment threw the courtroom into a chaotic buzz. Whispers, gasps, and murmurs swirled around Maya like a sudden storm, a maelstrom of disbelief, admiration, and simmering resentment. People leaned towards each other, their voices hushed, sharing their reactions, their opinions, their disbelief. The revelation of Maya's true identity had upended the carefully constructed narrative of the trial, sending shockwaves through the room. Some marveled at her poise, at the quiet confidence she carried herself with. Others remained skeptical, muttering about elaborate hoaxes and impossible feats. The courtroom, just moments before a space of rigid order and unspoken judgment, had transformed into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Teresa, watching from the plaintiff's table, felt her anxiety spike. The sudden chaos, the whispers and murmurs, the uncertainty in the room, it all amplified the doubts that had been gnawing at her since the beginning. She leaned towards Maya, her voice barely audible above the din. "Maya," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Are you sure we're going to win this? They're acting like you're some kind of fraud." Maya turned to Teresa, her expression gentle but firm. She reached out, her hand covering Teresa's, offering silent comfort and reassurance against the rising tide of doubt. The quiet touch was a powerful gesture, conveying more than words ever could. "They're acting that way," Maya said, her voice low and steady, "because they're afraid. They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of what happens when the truth comes out." Her words, simple yet powerful, resonated with a quiet strength that calmed Teresa's fears, that spoke to the intrinsic power of truth, of justice, and of fighting for what you believe in. "Teresa," Maya continued, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes unwavering, "trust me, the truth is on our side." The quiet assurance in her voice, the unwavering belief in the righteousness of their cause, was more powerful than any legal argument could ever be. The bailiff's announcement of the judge's return cut through the nervous chatter, restoring a fragile silence to the courtroom. The weight of anticipation hung heavy in the air, each person understanding the profound shift in the power dynamic and the imminent revelation that would follow. The hushed anticipation hung like smoke in the air, a testament to the moment's weight and significance. This brief recess, a space of uncertainty and swirling emotions, had become a pivotal moment in the trial, a quiet moment of truth and hope. The silence that followed the recess was heavier, more charged than before. Judge Patterson sat, his face a mask, his earlier arrogance replaced by a wary stillness. He looked at Maya, and for the first time, there was a hint of something other than contempt in his eyes. A flicker of respect, perhaps, or a dawning understanding of the depth of the situation he had underestimated. "Miss Brooks," he began, his voice firmer but lacking its former condescending edge, "the court acknowledges your credentials. You may proceed." A slight pause, a hesitant breath. But I advise you to tread carefully. You are still representing your client in a very serious matter. Maya rose, her every movement deliberate. She walked to the front of the courtroom, her bearing calm, her focus unwavering. She carried herself with a quiet dignity that spoke volumes, a silent response to the earlier insults, a testament to her resilience, her strength, and the integrity of her purpose. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and resonant, "I would like to submit additional evidence that further undermines the defense's claims." She presented the judge with a neatly organized stack of documents, copies of emails between Teresa and the landlord, emails that painted a starkly different picture than the landlord's testimony. Emails Maya had highlighted with bright yellow, ensuring nothing could be missed. The judge studied the documents in silence, his expression slowly shifting from neutral observation to a growing seriousness. Each passing second, his face grew grimmer. He was witnessing the deliberate deceit, the methodical construction of lies designed to manipulate and exploit a vulnerable family. A visible change passed over his face. He turned to Mr. Cole, the landlord's attorney, his voice sharp. "These emails," he stated clearly, "directly contradict your client's testimony. Do you have an explanation for this?" Mr. Cole, a middle-aged man whose hair was beginning to gray, hesitated. His confidence, previously unshaken, faltered, replaced by a growing unease. "Your Honor," he stammered, "these emails, they could have been fabricated. We would need time to verify their authenticity." Maya didn't flinch. She produced another document, a chain of custody report, complete with metadata verification from a certified digital forensics expert. The weight of this evidence was undeniable. The courtroom erupted in a wave of murmurs, a collective gasp of realization of a truth finally revealed. The digital evidence was undeniable. The manipulation, blatant. The quiet power of this evidence silenced the doubts. The judge's gavel came down sharply. "Order," he demanded, his voice regaining its authority but lacking its former arrogance. "Order in the court." His gaze settled on Mr. Cole. "Unless you can provide concrete evidence to refute this," he declared, his tone icy, "I will have no choice but to consider these emails valid. Miss Brooks, you may continue." The power dynamic had shifted, the tide had turned, the evidence was clear. The truth, finally, was coming to light. It was a moment of silent triumph, a quiet victory in the relentless fight for justice. Maya's presentation was unwavering, a quiet force that cut through the courtroom's tension. She methodically presented evidence, each point meticulously crafted, each detail carefully chosen, each word carrying the weight of legal precedents. She built her case with precision, painting a clear picture of the landlord's deliberate deceit. The room grew quiet under the weight of her words, her quiet power silencing the doubts and skepticism that had filled the air earlier. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Reynolds, the landlord, a burly man with a face twisted in fury, exploded. He leaped to his feet, his voice a roar that shattered the courtroom's fragile calm. "She's lying," he shouted, his finger pointing accusingly at Maya. "This whole thing is a setup. There's no way a kid like her knows all this legal stuff." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Judge Patterson's gavel slammed against the bench, a desperate attempt to regain control amidst the sudden outburst. The room buzzed with murmurs and whispered conversations, the tension palpable, the atmosphere charged with anger and disbelief. The outburst was a testament to the landlord's desperation, a desperate attempt to discredit Maya's arguments and regain control of the narrative. But Maya remained calm, her expression unwavering. She took a deep breath, her composure a stark contrast to the landlord's uncontrolled rage. "Your Honor," she said calmly, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the chaos. "If Mr. Reynolds has any evidence to support his accusations, I invite him to present it. Otherwise, I request that the court focus on the facts presented." Judge Patterson, regaining control with a steely glare at the landlord, nodded. "Mr. Reynolds," he said firmly, his voice ringing with authority, "you will remain silent unless called upon to speak. Miss Brooks, you may continue." The tension remained as Maya continued her presentation, her composure unyielding. The judge's clear support and the weight of the evidence presented were powerful allies. Later, the defense called their next witness, a maintenance worker from the apartment complex who claimed to have seen multiple people living in Teresa's apartment. He presented his testimony with a certainty that seemed carefully crafted, but that lacked specificity. It was a testimony that felt rehearsed rather than based on true experience. When it was Maya's turn to cross-examine, she approached the witness stand with a calm, measured stride. There was no aggression, no visible attempt at intimidation, only a quiet determination, a quiet strength that radiated from her. Her quiet power was more devastating than any shouted accusation. "Mr. Davis," Maya began softly, her voice devoid of any harshness. "You testified that you saw multiple people entering and leaving Miss Carter's apartment. Can you specify how many people and when this occurred?" The man hesitated, his eyes shifting nervously. Maybe 4 or 5 people," he stammered, his voice betraying his uncertainty. "And it was a couple of months ago." Maya nodded slowly. "A couple of months ago," she repeated, her voice calm, measured. "Do you remember the exact dates?" "No," he admitted, his discomfort growing. "Not exactly." "Did you report this to anyone at the time?" Maya pressed gently. "Well, no," the man said, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "It didn't seem like a big deal then." Maya's lips curved into a slight smile, a subtle expression that revealed more than mere amusement, a silent victory in her quiet, relentless pursuit of truth. "So, to clarify," she said, her voice soft, measured, "you're unable to provide specific dates or evidence to support your claim. Is that correct?" The man, his face flushed, could only nod, his carefully constructed testimony crumbling under the weight of Maya's calm, precise questioning. His earlier certainty had been replaced by a visible discomfort. It was a silent confession, exposed and discredited by the sheer skill and quiet power of a teenager who would not be intimidated. His testimony, intended to harm Teresa's case, had instead reinforced her truth and highlighted the flaws in the landlord's strategy. The moment was a turning point, a testament to Maya's ability and the landlord's impending defeat. The courthouse doors swung open, releasing a wave of tension into the crisp autumn air. Reporters swarmed Maya and Teresa, their questions a chaotic barrage against the backdrop of the day's events. Maya shielded Teresa, guiding her through the crowd, her own exhaustion a heavy weight against her shoulders. The relief of the courtroom victory felt fragile, threatened by the lingering tension. It was a fleeting moment of celebration before the next battle began. As they reached the relative quiet of the street, 2 police officers approached, their presence abruptly cutting through the celebratory buzz. One of them, a young man with a grim set to his jaw, stepped forward. "Miss Brooks," he said, his voice devoid of warmth, "we need to talk." Maya froze, a sudden chill running down her spine despite the warm afternoon sun. Teresa gasped, her hand instinctively flying to her mouth. A wave of dread washed over her, the hard-won victory now threatened by this unexpected intervention. The abrupt change in the day's events created a suspenseful moment. The seemingly impossible task of overcoming both the landlord and the legal system felt even more profound. The officer glanced at Mr. Reynolds, who stood smirking smugly across the lobby, his earlier defeat transformed into a cruel amusement at this new development. It was a smugness that fueled Maya's determination. It was the smugness of someone who felt they still held the upper hand, a quiet confidence born of systemic injustice. "We've received a report," the officer continued, his tone formal, his words carrying the weight of a serious accusation. "From Mr. Reynolds, he alleges that you falsified evidence in this case." Teresa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, the fear in her eyes palpable. Maya's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her mind raced, trying to understand the tactic, the audacity of this new attack. "That's a serious accusation," Maya said, her voice steady, her expression unflinching. "What evidence does he have to support it?" The officer shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping slightly. "We're not here to determine that," he said, his tone softening slightly. "We're just doing our due diligence. We need you to come down to the station to answer some questions." Maya met the officer's gaze, her expression unchanging, her composure a quiet power against the blatant attempt at intimidation. She understood the game being played, a scare tactic designed to rattle them, to undermine their victory. "I understand," Maya replied, her voice calm, controlled. "But I'd like to speak with my client and my legal counsel before I go anywhere." The officer, caught off guard by her quiet assurance, hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Fine," he conceded. "Don't take too long." As they turned to walk away, Teresa whispered, a torrent of anxiety filling her voice. "What if they arrest you, Maya? What if they believe him?" Maya turned to Teresa, her voice low, reassuring. "They won't," she said, her gaze firm, unwavering. "I've done nothing wrong, and they have no proof otherwise. Stay calm. Don't say anything to Mr. Reynolds or his attorney." Her quiet assurance, her absolute certainty in her own innocence, was a beacon in Teresa's fear, offering a quiet strength in the face of impending adversity. The scene ended with the clear conflict, the tension, and the promise of a new challenge to overcome. The police station felt cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the warmth of the courthouse. Maya sat in a small interrogation room, the metal table and two hard chairs a symbol of her vulnerability. A young officer sat opposite her, a tape recorder humming on the table, a mechanical witness to the unfolding events. "Miss Brooks," the officer began, his tone formal, his words carefully chosen. "You're not under arrest, but we need to ask you some questions about the evidence you submitted in court. Mr. Reynolds claims it was fabricated." Maya folded her hands on the table, her expression calm, her composure a quiet strength against the weight of the accusation. "The evidence I submitted is authentic," she replied, her voice steady. "I have documentation to prove its validity, including a chain of custody report from a certified digital forensics expert." The officer frowned slightly. "Do you have those documents with you?" "They're in my case file," Maya said, her voice even. "Back in the courtroom." A slight pause, a brief hesitation, a moment that conveyed the inherent unfairness of the situation. "You're welcome to review them," she added quietly. The officer hesitated, his gaze lingering on Maya's calm face, the quiet confidence in her eyes. He seemed to sense the inherent truth in her demeanor. Her quiet strength was unsettling, a silent protest against the injustice of the situation. The moment of silence stretched, the hum of the tape recorder a stark counterpoint to the unspoken tension in the room. This was more than just a questioning. It was a test of wills, a quiet battle between truth and manufactured doubt. The officer leaned back in his chair, his tone shifting slightly. Why would Mr. Reynolds make these accusations if they weren't true? Maya's response was blunt, direct, devoid of any emotional drama. "Because he's desperate," she stated calmly. "His case is falling apart, and he knows it. This is his way of trying to discredit me and delay the proceedings." The officer studied her for a long moment, his gaze searching, assessing. Then he stood abruptly. "Wait here," he said, his tone less accusatory now. He left, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts, with the weight of the accusation, and with the creeping anxiety that threatened to undermine her carefully constructed composure. The doubt, a fleeting shadow, crossed her mind. What if this derailed everything? What if they believed the landlord's lies? The fear, a brief flicker, threatened to consume her, but she pushed it back, reminding herself of Teresa, of the importance of their fight. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. The officer returned, followed by a tall older man with sharp eyes and a confident stride. Mr. Harris, the retired attorney Clara had contacted. Mr. Harris gave Maya a reassuring nod before turning to the officer. "I'm here as Miss Brooks' legal counsel," Mr. Harris stated clearly, his voice firm, his presence instantly altering the dynamic of the room. "What exactly is the basis for this questioning?" The officer explained the landlord's accusations, but Mr. Harris listened impassively, his expression unchanged. When the officer finished, Mr. Harris leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. "This is a baseless claim," he said, his words carrying the weight of decades of legal experience. "If Mr. Reynolds has evidence to support these allegations, let him present it. Otherwise, you're detaining my client without cause." The officer shifted uncomfortably, His earlier confidence noticeably diminished under Mr. Harris's steady gaze. The power had shifted. The situation was under control. "We're not detaining her," the officer mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. "Then she's free to go," Mr. Harris interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. The officer, his earlier authority deflated, nodded. "She's free to go, but we'll be following up on this." Maya stood, her quiet confidence restored. "I'll be happy to cooperate," she said calmly, "within the bounds of the law." As they left the station, Mr. Harris placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "You handled yourself well," he said, his voice laced with respect and a hint of concern. "But be careful, this landlord is playing dirty." The exchange was a powerful testament to the quiet strength of Maya, her unwavering resolve, and the support she had found in unexpected allies. The scene ended with a sense of relief, but also lingering tension. The fight, clearly, was far from over. The police station felt cold and impersonal, a stark contrast to the warmth of Maya's grandmother's kitchen. But the chill Maya felt wasn't just from the sterile environment, it was from the weight of the accusation hanging over her. She sat across from the officer, the hum of the tape recorder a constant, unsettling reminder of the gravity of the situation. The officer's questions were precise, designed to probe, to challenge. But Maya's responses were measured, calm, unwavering. She wasn't defensive, but resolute, her composure a testament to her quiet strength. It was a testament to her knowledge and understanding of the legal system, and a testament to her unwavering commitment to justice. She presented facts, not emotion. Her quiet confidence, a powerful counterpoint to the weight of the accusation. Later that evening, back at her grandmother's house, Maya sat with Teresa, Clara, and Aaron, the weight of the day pressing down on them all. Teresa, her face pale with worry, looked at Maya, her concern palpable. She'd seen the doubts, heard the whispers that had filled the courtroom, heard the insidiousness of Mr. Reynolds' new attack. She understood the weight of their fight, understood the potential for devastating consequences. Maya, though outwardly calm, felt the pressure. The financial records presented by Mr. Cole, records suggesting Teresa had been hiding income, were a carefully crafted blow, designed to undermine Teresa's credibility and cast doubt on her claim of financial hardship. They knew it was a lie. They knew it was another of Reynolds' tactics. But proving it was a different matter. "I don't understand," Teresa whispered, her voice trembling. "I've never seen these before. They're not mine." Maya's mind raced. The documents looked official, but something felt deeply wrong, a subtle inconsistency, a barely perceptible flaw in the overall narrative. She had seen such things before in the landlord's documents. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she began cross-referencing the account numbers and transaction details. A quiet intensity filled the room, a shared determination to unravel the deception. The hope was quiet, the determination strong. Hours later, a triumphant grin spread across Maya's face. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her laptop screen. "The account these payments are coming from. It belongs to a company called Harmony Solutions. Have you ever heard of them?" Teresa shook her head. "No. It's a shell company," Maya explained, her voice low but steady, her explanation clear and precise. "No real business operations. A P.O. box in another state, a website with vague descriptions of consulting services." It was Aaron who finally connected the dots. After several minutes of quiet research and analysis, he looked up with a grim smile. "Harmony Solutions," he announced, the weight of his words emphasizing the undeniable truth. "It's registered under a holding company owned by your landlord, Mr. Reynolds." Maya's jaw tightened. "So he's behind this," she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet carrying a weight of certainty, of justified anger, of quiet strength. "He created fake records to frame Teresa." The quiet intensity of her voice underscored the gravity of the situation and the quiet indignation felt in the room. The revelation wasn't a joyous event, but the calm confidence and determined strength in the pursuit of justice was palpable. "Looks like it," Aaron confirmed, his own quiet intensity mirroring Maya's. "And I've got the digital breadcrumbs to prove it. These transactions were fabricated using template software, An amateur move, really. Maya smiled, a genuine smile this time, a smile of relief and quiet triumph. "Aaron," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude, "you're a lifesaver." The quiet victory felt profound. The fight continued, but they had turned the tide and they were getting closer. The scene shifts from the intensity of investigation back to a gentle yet powerful moment of quiet triumph. The courtroom was quiet, the aftermath of the landlord's arrest hanging heavy in the air. A fragile sense of relief settled over Teresa, a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, this was finally over. But Maya felt a knot of unease tightening in her chest. The fight, she knew, was far from finished. Then, Mr. Cole, the landlord's attorney, stood, a manila folder in his hand. His demeanor was different now, more desperate perhaps, his earlier confidence replaced by a growing desperation. His words, carefully chosen, carried the weight of a final, desperate attempt at victory. "Your Honor," he announced, his voice strained, "in light of these recent allegations, my client intends to file a countersuit for defamation. We will be filing the paperwork immediately." The announcement hung in the air, a chilling disruption to the fragile sense of relief that had settled over the room. A countersuit. The words echoed through Maya's mind, a sudden wave of cold dread washing over her. It was a desperate gamble. She knew it was. But it was a gamble they could not ignore, and one that could undermine all that they had achieved. Teresa, her face pale, turned to Maya, her voice barely a whisper. "What does this mean? Can he really do this?" Maya placed a reassuring hand on Teresa's arm, her expression firm, her voice low and steady. "He's bluffing, Teresa. He knows his case is weak. This is just another attempt to intimidate us, to wear us down, to exhaust us into submission, but we're not backing down." Her quiet assurance was a testament to her resilience and unwavering faith in the power of truth. That evening, Maya, Teresa, Clara, and Aaron gathered at Maya's grandmother's home, the air thick with worry and the scent of strong tea. Maya laid out the situation, her voice measured and calm in the face of growing anxieties. "This countersuit," she said, her tone thoughtful, "is a distraction. But we can't ignore it. If we let it gain traction, it could muddy the waters, making it harder for the judge to see the truth." Aaron leaned forward, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. "I've been digging into Reynolds' financial records," he said, his voice low and intense. "The guy's got skeletons in his closet. I've found transactions tied to other shell companies, Maya. It looks like he's been using them to dodge taxes and funnel money." Clara's eyes widened. "That's serious," she breathed, her voice filled with a mixture of horror and dawning understanding. "Could that help your case?" Maya nodded slowly. "It could," she replied, her voice serious. "But we need to tread carefully. If we bring this up, we'll need solid proof and a strategy to tie it directly back to this case." The possibility of revealing further corruption, of exposing a wider pattern of exploitation, resonated powerfully within the room. It was a moment of hope against seemingly insurmountable odds. Teresa, overwhelmed, looked on the verge of tears. "This is so much," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to protect my kids and keep our home." Maya placed a comforting hand on Teresa's shoulder, her eyes reflecting the shared weight of their struggle and the deep empathy between them. "I know, Teresa," she said softly, "and that's exactly what we're going to do. No matter how dirty they play, we're not backing down." The moment was a testament to their resilience, to their unwavering belief in justice, and the quiet power of their shared determination. The countersuit felt like another obstacle, a new battle to be faced, but they would prevail. The scene ended with a quiet yet resolute determination to fight. If you've ever felt unheard, undervalued, or silenced, you're not alone. Maya's story is a testament to the quiet power of one voice, a voice that dared to speak up against injustice. Join us as we witness her journey, a journey of resilience and unwavering determination. Share this video with others who've been in similar situations. Perhaps they need to know they're not alone. Let's honor Maya's courage and inspire others to speak up for what's right.